What's up guys, welcome back to another video, and today we will be covering part 3 of What If Ash's journey was randomized. If you guys have already seen the last 2 parts, you guys already know the rules. And if you already know the rules, skip to the timestamp on the screen. But let me recap them real quick. The first rule is that almost all 115 Pokemon are fair game. The second rule is that mythicals and legendaries won't be able to show up until we get to Hoenn. The third rule is that the starters will remain universal. And the fourth rule is that all the gym leaders will remain type locked. So with those rules out of the way, let's get on to the video. The following day, Ash and his friends arrive in Fuchsia City, and of course they go straight to challenging the gym. Ash and Koga's first Pokemon are Salazzle and Larvitar. Thanks to the rock and ground typing, not too many of the lizard's moves deal much damage. Using Stomping Tantrum and a newly learned Stone Edge, they're able to pull out the win. Koga's ace Pokemon is a Toxicroak, and this fight isn't very long, as Larvitar quickly gets taken out by a Focus Blast. Ash's final Pokemon is Weasel, and even though it's faster than its rocky friend, it's still not much of a match for the frog. To make things worse, Team Rocket shows up to interrupt his fight, and to match the Team Rocket name, Toxicroak sends them blasting off. Once that trio is gone, Koga decides to call it a day, seeing as Ash's Pokemon aren't strong enough to handle his Toxicroak just yet. At first, Ash is pretty mad about this, but after looking at the state of his Pokemon, he accepts the gym leader's judgment. In order to train, Ash ends up going to the Safari Zone, where our trio end up entering the Big P Pokemon race. Ash rides atop Laura's grotto. Misty isn't able to join, but she does send in her Shellos and Frogadier, while Brock rides Boldore. After that, we have the events of the Kangaskhan Kid, but instead it's a bunch of Licky Lickies. During the events of this episode, Weasel learns Rain Dance, and because of that, they figure out that Weasel's ability is Swift Swim. During their training, Team Rocket challenges Ash to see who can catch more Pokemon, and of course, if it means that Team Rocket will get off their backs, Ash takes up this challenge. Ash and Brock end up catching a pack of 10 Furfroos instead of Tauroses. With 20 Safari Balls remaining, Brock and Misty decide to speed this up by catching some for him. So they split up to find other Pokemon to catch. In order the Pokemon they catch, it's 2 Litleos, 2 Tyrogues, 1 Tentacruel, 1 Alolan Graveler, 1 Seismitoad, 3 Azurill, 1 Impidimp, 8 Stantlers, and finally Misty decides to help out by fishing, and she reels in a Fuecoco somehow. The gang then get wrapped up into Team Rocket's scheme of trying to steal a Mantike instead of a Dratini. Once all is said and done, Ash is feeling a little generous, so he gives Graveler and an Azurill to Brock and Misty as a thanks for helping him, something he feels immediate regret as they both start teasing him for being so nice. It's so out of character for him. Anyways, after a few more training sessions, Ash decides to go back and re-challenge Koga. Larvitar's battle with Salazzle remains nearly identical. The trouble starts when Toxicroak comes out. Almost immediately, Ash shows off his new strategy of having Larvitar stack its Stone Edge to create a sort of cocoon of rocks around it, giving Larvitar a layer of defense and attack, allowing it to launch rocks whenever Toxicroak has an opening. However, there's a huge downside as it gives Larvitar such poor visibility, giving Toxicroak more than enough opportunities to dodge and send a Focus Blast into the cocoon. Eventually, it gets to be too much for Larvitar to take and it faints. With Larvitar fainted, Ash decides to bring out Weasel, who immediately starts off with Rain Dance. It then tries to use Bulk Up, only to be stopped by a Drain Punch. Thanks to the fact that Toxicroak is twice the size of Weasel and slightly slower, the Weasel is able to outmaneuver the frog most of the time. The battle comes to its end when Weasel uses Aqua Tail to catch and redirect Toxicroak's Focus Blast. Taking damage from both the Aqua Tail and Focus Blast is enough to finally knock out the frog, earning Ash the Soul Badge. During the biker episode, Pansage fights Jesse's Wimpod, and the bug type finally evolves into a Glycopod. After basically having a Vietnam flashback to his first encounter with one, Ash panics, recalling Pansage and bringing out his Delibird. Thanks to the type advantage, he's able to send Team Rocket blasting off. Once they arrive at Sunnytown, Pansage lets Ash know that it's pretty angry he switched it out for that Santa Claus wannabe. After he works out what it's trying to say, Ash apologizes for it and promises to never do it again. We then have the Ditto episode, but instead of a Ditto, it's a Florges who struggles to control its fairy type moves, I guess. The infamous Porygon episode is not about the cybernetic bird. Instead, the episode's about two Quilavas. One of them gets taken by Team Rocket, the two Quilavas fight, and eventually Quilava Zero is given back to Dr. Akihabara. Look guys, I really couldn't think of anything interesting that could take place in those two episodes, but if you guys can think of something better in the comments down below, let me know. After this, not much changes until the gang find an Ursaring tied to a post inside a tree hollow. Despite its outward appearance, the bear seems quite docile. May even notices it has a name tag and an address on it saying that it belongs to a trainer who lives in Stone Town. This is where they meet Mikey and his brothers, Sparky, Rainer, and Pyro, who own a Why Not, Fortress, and Grubbin. The only change here is that Ash is given a shiny and leaf stone, and not much else changes. Ash does offer Pansage the chance to evolve. However, Pansage, most of all, seems angered by the idea of evolving, slapping the stone away. In the episode, The March of the Executor Squad, Melvin convinces Misty to partake in his magic show. Ash and his Buizel then go on to defeat a bunch of Carbinkses. The Paris episode becomes an episode about an Applin evolving into an Appleton. After this, they find a wild Cottony who uses Grass Whistle to put them to sleep and draw on their faces. We then have the episode Attack of the Prehistoric Pokemon, or I guess Attack of the Future Pokemon in this case, as we see Charcadet and Buizel try to save Ash from an evil Iron Bundle. Unfortunately, the duo end up getting knocked out, only to have Pansage pop out of its ball. Since it looks so much like Delibird, Pansage takes great pleasure in attacking the robot. However, it's not as easy as the monkey had hoped, as Iron Bundle is still part ice, so it's able to deal super effective damage. As the Metal Penguin readies up an attack, Pansage just stands there exhausted, not really able to do much. Suddenly, Delibird comes out of nowhere, stopping the Drill Peck with an Aerial Ace. Something Pansage isn't too happy about, telling the bird to get out of here. It doesn't need help from any other Pokemon, especially from it. Delibird responds that it won't just stand aside and let its friends and trainer be killed by this robotic version of itself. Pansage, having had enough of this, pushes the bird aside and runs towards the robot. Unfortunately, Iron Bundle had previously frozen parts of the ground, so Pansage slips and slams headfirst into the ground, giving Iron Bundle enough time to charge up an Ice Beam from its tail. Pansage braces itself for the attack, but Delibird once again comes in for the save, as it grabs the tail and aims the attack elsewhere. Pansage once again expresses its anger about being saved by Delibird once again, but it can't get up, having used the last bit of its energy already. Delibird facing off against Iron Bundle is the last thing Pansage remembers, as the Cottony from earlier has shown up to put everybody to sleep, and much like in the original timeline, Ash finds an egg. After all of that, we move on to the James episode, where we see that instead of having Growly the Growlithe at home waiting for him, we see that James has an Obstagoon at home waiting for him. Out in the forest, they encounter a trainer and his Zatanna, who have apparently been stealing Pokeballs. And for the first time ever, Misty's Toxel was finally able to win a trainer battle. Because they were able to defeat his Zatanna, they're able to take him to Officer Jenny, who gives him life in prison. After a while of more traveling, the egg finally hatches into a Wattrel that imprints on Misty and becomes her Pokemon. We then have Pansage's mysterious garden, where Nurse Joy explains that a bunch of Pansage all gathered together here to evolve. Ash pulls out the leaf stone he got earlier, and for a moment thinks that maybe he should evolve Pansage. But Ash knows that forcing a Pokemon to evolve that doesn't want to evolve would be really cruel. So again, Ash asks if the Pokemon would like to evolve. Pansage seems revolted that Ash would ask that once again. However, just as it's about to slap the stone away, a thought crosses its mind. The monkey gives a disgusted and hesitant look before it grabs the leaf stone and runs off with it. When everybody gives chase, it turns out that Pansage had run to the garden so it can evolve with the rest of its kind. Once the evolution is done, Ash runs up to his Pokemon hugging it. However, the now Meanwhile, Simisage doesn't seem interested in hugs right now, as it pushes Ash off, and with its vines, Simisage swipes a Pokeball from Ash's belt. Pressing the button, it releases Delibird to everybody's confusion. Simisage then gets into a fighting pose, clearly demanding the bird fight it. Delibird, in its confusion, questions why its friend wants to battle, only to have Simisage nearly hit it with a Vine Whip, purposely missing the bird as it's trying to provoke it into fighting. No one is sure why Simisage is acting this way until Brock kinda realizes why. Although it's a guess, Brock says that Simisage must hold some resentment towards Delibird, because when they first met, Delibird had beaten it in a fight while it was trying to protect its friend, which led to both of them being captured. And most recently, its anger must have boiled over with the battles against Golisopod and Iron Bundle. Simisage must have been feeling inferior to Delibird, which is why it chose to evolve, to give it the power that it finally needs to beat Delibird. When asked if that's why Simisage is mad, it nods. Ash tries to talk it down, however the monkey is not listening, as it uses a Razor Leaf directly aimed at Delibird, who is barely able to dodge it, and since Ash can't get it to calm down, he decides to give it the battle it's seeking. So Delibird and Simisage have a rematch. But even with its newly found power, Simisage is still at a massive disadvantage, since it's weak to both the ice and flying types. As Simisage starts to get pushed back, it learns a new move. The monkey's pompadour suddenly starts to grow and grow until it engulfs it. The grass-like hair then sharpens, a move that Brock says is called Spiky Shield. Because Delibird is more of a physical attacker, every time it attacks the shield, the bird receives massive recoil damage. The battle concludes when Simisage is able to bait Delibird into using a triple axle. After Simisage manages to dodge all three of the kicks, it wraps its vines around the feet of Delibird. The monkey then slams the bird against the ground multiple times before jumping into the air and finishing it off with a barrage of razor leaves. This is more than enough to finally defeat Delibird. And when Simisage lands, it begins to laugh for some reason. And seeing that, Ash recalls both his Pokemon and takes them to the Pokemon Center. Following this battle, Simisage seems to have gained a bit of arrogance to it, thinking it's better than Ash's other Mons, and even going out of its way to mess with them. It will still listen to Ash up until Simisage thinks it can do better. Then it just stops listening to him. In the following episode, Princess vs. Princess, Jessie catches a Trubbish instead of a Lickitung. Also, apparently the Officer Jennies of Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, and the Sinnoh regions all use Toadschools instead of Growlithe. Maybe it's because they can run 30 miles per hour? Otherwise, I have no idea why they would use them. Other than that, the only thing of note in this episode is that James's Vanillish becomes a Vanillux. At some point between this and the Butch and Cassidy episode, James catches a Q-Font instead of a Victory Bell. We then move on to the battle with Blaine, who begins with an Oricorio while Ash sends in his Buizel. Despite being faster than the bird, its strange dance movements prevent Buizel from landing many attacks. After finally being able to set up Rain Dance and a well-placed Aqua Tail, Oricorio gets taken out. Blaine's second Pokemon is Marowak. Although the rain is still in effect, Marowak seemingly hasn't lost much power, as Marowak's Fire Punch is able to break through Buizel's Aqua Tail with little to no effort. This entire fight, Buizel's on the defensive. What makes things worse is that the rain eventually dissipates, stripping Buizel of that extra boost in speed. While he's setting up a final Rain Dance, the Ghost type comes out of nowhere and knocks out the Weasel with the Shadow Bone. Ash's second Pokemon is Purloin, who is able to take away Marowak's bone with Thief. It's not a move that Ash is particularly happy that one of his Pokemon knows, or that he uses, but if it gets the job done, who cares? Meanwhile, the cat seemingly has started playing Keep Away with the bone, and it uses Night Slash on the Ghost type whenever it gets too close. Ultimately, Purloin knocks out Marowak with a combo of Night Slash and smashing the bone into Marowak's skull. Blaine's final Pokemon is Ceruledge, Ceruledge. Before the battle begins, Ash decides to swap out Purloin to give it some rest and brings out Larvitar instead. This proves to be a bit more challenging than Ash had hoped for, as while Bite and Outrage aren't the worst of moves, it proves to be a bad strategy here, because it involves Larvitar getting up and personal, and Ceruledge shows how dangerous that is by using two specific moves, Solar Blade and Bitter Blade, as Solar Blade does massive amounts of damage to Larvitar, while Bitter Blade helps Ceruledge heal itself. This means they have to rely on Larvitar's long-range attacks, but only about 25% of the rocks thrown actually land. Ultimately, Ceruledge finishes off the starter with the Solar Blade, forcing Purloin to come back out. Using its cat-like reflexes, it dodges and even sometimes reflects Ceruledge's sword with Night Slash. The battle ends with Purloin running up its sword arm and landing a critical hit on Ceruledge's face, thus earning Ash his 6th badge, the Volcano Badge. Wondering where to go next for Ash's 7th badge, Brock suggests that they go back to the Viridian Gym, and with little discussion, that's where they're headed. On their way there, they notice that Shellos looks ill as it swims in a fountain, and so Misty suggests going back to Cerulean City, as the gym there has a big enough pool. Since Ash hasn't gotten the badge from there, he has no problem going, and so they make the detour to Cerulean City. After Misty puts on the Water Mermaid Ballet, she and Ash have their long-awaited rematch. Their first 3 Pokemon are Roselia and Buizel. At first, it seems like Roselia suffers from the same problem as before, with Bullet Seed and Razor Leaf not making it far enough into the water to actually hit the Weasel. That is until it learns a new move, Power Whip. Vines pop out of its rosebuds and they reach down and pull Buizel out of the water. So whenever Buizel goes down into the water, Roselia just uses Power Whip to pull it back out and then hit it with some grass type moves. After a few times of repeating this process, Buizel goes out and Vaporeon comes out. Unlike Buizel, Vaporeon is a lot harder for the Thorn Pokemon to track underwater, as it blends into the water quite well. But once Roselia falls into the water, it's all over for the grass type, as it gets bombarded by Aqua Tails, Mud Slaps, and takedowns. Ash's second mon is Delibird, whose flight is able to keep it out of Vaporeon's range. This battle would go on to resemble their first fight for a little bit. However, when Delibird's triple axle hits and freezes the water, it gives Ash an idea. And so Delibird covers its talons in thin ice and twirls on the water. The more it twirls, the more water it freezes, and once it's big enough, Delibird digs its talons into the ice and pulls out a giant drill-shaped iceberg and tosses it at Vaporeon. The Water Fox tries to get away from it, but ends up ultimately being crushed by the ice. Brock does comment that when Delibird was freezing the water, it was technically using a move called Ice Spinner. With Vaporeon out for the count, Misty's final Pokemon is Frogadier, whose incredible hopping ability allows it to jump high enough to attack Delibird up close. On top of that, Frogadier knows Swift, allowing it to hit the bird whenever it's not countered by Delibird's present attack. Ash eventually tries to use the Ice Drill move again, and Frogadier does try to stop it. However, it ends up slipping on the ice and falling into the water. This leaves Frogadier a little dazed, which gives Delibird enough time to create another one of those icebergs. The ice hits the frog, dragging it further underwater. Then suddenly the water lights up in a dazzling white light, and once the glow stops, the iceberg gets cut clean in half. Out of the water pops out an all too familiar frog. It's Greninja, holding 2 water kunai. Misty starts fangirling over her brand new evolution, and Greninja shows off its new power by nearly knocking out Delibird in one hit. Delibird tries to go for its triple axle, but only ends up hitting Greninja once. One water shuriken later, and Delibird is taken down, forcing Ash to bring out his final Pokemon, Simisage. The monkey is itching to battle as it jumps from side to side. It's quickly made apparent that Greninja is almost stronger than Simisage in nearly every stat. However, the Thorn Monkey seems to hold its own thanks to its typing and its move, Spiky Shield. The move gives Ash the opportunity to think up of a comeback plan. However, it also works vice versa, as it takes a minute for Misty to think of a way around the type disadvantage, as she has Greninja use its water kunai to cut pieces of the ice that Delibird left behind into 2 ice kunai. With those, Greninja starts dealing super effective damage to the grass type. The battle comes to a conclusion when Simisage uses Vine Whip to launch itself into the air. With the use of Spiky Shield, Simisage rolls into a ball and uses Vine Whip once again to launch itself off the ceiling and towards Greninja. Spinning towards it, the frog tries blocking with the kunais. However, these quickly shatter and they go crashing down to the bottom of the pool. A minute later, Simisage pops out of the water holding a fainted Greninja, thus finally earning Ash the Cascade badge. Before departing, Misty decides to leave Shellos and Buizel back at the gym. With Ash finally getting his 7th badge, it's finally time to go get his 8th. So they head back to Viridian City. And that's where we're going to be leaving things off for today. So originally I was planning on covering Giovanni's gym as well here, but I ran out of time. So it'll be in the beginning of the 4th part, which should cover Giovanni's gym all the way up into the league. So now let me cover 2 things that most people are going to be asking about. The first thing is, why did I give Ash so many Pokemon in the Safari Zone? And it's a very simple answer. I needed to ensure that Ash got a water Pokemon for the Orange Islands. That's why I only gave Ash 10 Furfroos and I left the 20 for any other extra Pokemon. And the second thing that I think a lot of people are going to be mad about is having Pansage evolve instead of Charcadet. So the main plan was to have Charcadet evolve. However, when I was writing the fossil Pokemon episode, one of the fossil Pokemon, I believe it was Amistar, was randomized into Iron Bundle. I decided that Simisage was the one who kinda deserves to evolve. Not that Charcadet doesn't, but finding the armor for Charcadet would have been a lot harder to write in. So that was my thinking behind why Simisage evolved. Anyways, that's enough out of me. So go ahead, enjoy your day. Remember to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys later.